Thank you, Commissioner. I'm just going to ask Mario to come up and introduce his team. Just a couple of points about, we've got about 8 weeks left before the legislature adjourns, and the Revenue Estimating Conference will report out tomorrow. That gives the state how much money they have to spend this year and what the forecast is for the years, outlying years. So, you know, a lot of people interested in a lot of different initiatives. The budget won't come into focus until that Revenue Estimating Conference issues its report. Then they start, and the march towards adjournment by the end of June. So just FYI, tomorrow, on Tuesday, we'll have a better sense of what's available to spend fiscally. Hopefully, it's enough to see us through this year, but just a warning in years ahead, we're all going to be tightening our belts a bit. So, Mario, I'll let you introduce your team, and it's all yours.
Thank you, sir. Some of you may believe this, others probably won't, but I am not here today to talk about school construction. I'm not here to tell you that Rhode Island is now #1 in Green Ribbon School Awards nationally, with 5 winners announced last week, including Garden City in Cranston, Dunn's Corner in Westerly, DeBate Elementary School in Providence, Spaziano Elementary School in Providence, and the Charahoe Regional School District with 5 winners. We are now #1 nationally, but we're not going to talk about that today. I'm also not going to talk about how on May 28th we anticipate $1.1 billion of new school construction projects in 12 communities, which would bring us, so from 2018 to 2024, the 6-year period, the Pax Romana of school construction with all these bonuses and incentives, a total of $5 billion of projects will be approved throughout the state, which is huge. We are tracking 50 new schools in Rhode Island, which is equivalent of 1,300 schools in California over that period. It's an unprecedented investment, and it's because of all of you, because of municipalities, and because of the hard work of a lot of the stakeholders here to make this a reality. So we are on a right track, but we're not talking about that today. The other piece, when Tim had asked if we wanted 2 hours for UCOA, I said 2 hours. I go, I mean, Dave Testa's already sleeping on this one, but we have this. So we have this as an interactive presentation, and I'll hand it over in a minute to Tatiana and Dr. Guerrero. But we've broken it up. It's interactive. It's trying to be fun. What we're going to do, and this has worked in other examples, as we show you how to access the dashboards, we're going to first, during the training stage, we'll focus on Lincoln. So some of you know I'm also a member of Lincoln School Committee. So as they, yes, oh, and a shout out to Marianne and Cheryl who are here for Lincoln, so thank you for that. What it'll do is we'll add color commentary from a Lincoln perspective. Some of you may relate to that. We have a scavenger hunt forthcoming where you can do this, and then it'll help you ask your own questions. But that seemed to have worked in the past when you see the data, and then I can explain what we did to either get there or how we reacted to it. Might be and has been useful to others in the past. We have made, and RIDE has made, a significant investment in UCOA over the last 3 years. We want to make sure that this information gets into the hands of stakeholders, but in a way that you can understand it. Like it's very complicated, and if you just have numbers on a spreadsheet, it means nothing. The most important thing about data is how it's presented and how it's digested and then how it's used. And if you can't do the last 3, it doesn't matter how good your data is. So you'll see we have a lot of visualizations. One of the things that has been useful as we do presentations around the state, all of these dashboards can be customized. So if there's things that you would want there, let us know. You can raise your hand today, you can put it in the feedback, or you can send email later. And we make adjustments in real time. So if there's things that should be there, let us know. We'll put them in there. We're also developing, it's known as like the street version of this, where anyone from the street could process your information. We find from user feedback a lot of the lingo is still overly complicated if you don't understand, if you don't live this. So we're working to even simplify that. That is forthcoming in the next few weeks, but I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with what we have for you today. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Tatiana and Dr. Guerrero.
Thank you, Mario, and good morning, everyone. So today, Dr. Guerrero and I will be walking through some of the dashboards that our team has developed to, like Mario said, be able to help you understand the data that comes from your district and enhance your decision-making skills. And so we're going to go through an icebreaker, an overview of UCOA. We're going to demonstrate how to use the dashboards, how to access them, what they all mean, what information you can find in each one of them. Then we'll take like a 5-minute break, because after us, you're getting a break, so then you get 2 breaks. And then we'll do more of an interactive session where you'll be able to navigate to each dashboard on your own and then discuss within your teams the things that you're finding. And then we'll share out. And then we'll conclude, and hopefully you'll take our survey, and that'll be all from us. And so our team is made up of 3 people aside of our Director of Statewide Efficiencies, Kevin, who's here as well. We have Juan Taveras, myself, and Dr. Guerrero. We all have the same position essentially, so if you ever have any questions, you can reach out to any 3 of us, and we'll share our contact information at the end. And so to start off, we're going to do this icebreaker. So if you have your computer, you can go to this link, or if you want to do it on your phone, you could also scan that QR code. Okay, so it looks like you all feel that one skill or quality that makes one a good school committee member looks like patience, listening, or ability to listen. It looks like listener, they're there a few times. Patience looks like a big one. So you can see that you're all sort of feeling the same way about the qualities that are needed in order to be a good school committee member. Curiosity, inquisitive, passionate. Looks like listening is there quite a bit. So awesome. Thank you for indulging us in this one. We have one other question for you. And you don't have to, I don't think you have to exit out. It's in the same QR code, but we'll show that now. Yeah, perfect. So it looks like not a lot of you feel like this might be possible. So we wanted to just sort of get an idea of what you're feeling, what your feelings are with this. So again, thank you for indulging us. Just wanted to get the icebreaker going here. Continuing on with the presentation. Oh, sorry.
So, the other one was partially in jest, but it's really to frame this whole presentation. For Woonsocket, it should have said any increase, not 4%. But the purpose of that is that we are in an era where ESSER funds are gone, ARPA funds for the municipalities are gone. The state is no longer going to hold people harmless. We have declining enrollments. So the era we've been in the last 4 years, where things can be smoothed out with minor changes or sacrifices, is over. Is over. So, and I say that because any new priorities or initiatives that you will be considering will not be funded likely by new resources. They will be funded by a reallocation of existing resources, right? You need information to understand what your priorities are. Where are your best returns on investment, not from a financial perspective, but from an outcome perspective, right? Where is the money going, and what outcomes are you getting? And you need information to be able to make those choices. You can't just assume that X works and Y works. So the purpose of this is to give you and illustrate how you're spending your money, so that you can not only look within, but also compare yourself to your peers. Some of these dashboards you'll see are set up so that each community, as you click yourself, it's pre-populated with peers. Now you can change whatever peers you want, but it's done in a way so you can see how your spending compares to theirs. And if yours is high in a certain area, the idea is that you would ask questions as to why are you spending your money like that? Why aren't we doing this? What are we doing about X? So that's the whole framing of this. The days of just asking for more money, those are over. The other piece that makes this really high stakes is, as a state, we're down, our enrollment's down. Over the last 20 years, we've lost 23,000 students statewide. Over the last 10 years, and this is what makes it really high stakes, is that the proportion of disadvantaged students everywhere has gone up. That means free and reduced lunch students, special ed students, and multilingual learners are up for everyone. So we have less students, less money, and students who require more resources to succeed. It's the perfect storm, or the imperfect storm, and we need to work together to get answers. So that's the framing of this. I think the timing is great. One of the things we have worked on is making this information available sooner and sooner. This is our third year now. The first year was available, I think, in the fall, which was too late. Last year was in August. Now we're in May. So you guys are actually seeing the new data before even the districts who are getting it on Mondays. You guys are getting it before the administration. This is the first showing of this, with the goal in the future is to have this available in February or March, right at the beginning of your budgeting process, so you can use it to make decisions. So that's the framing of this. If you, at any time you have questions, don't wait to ask them, because if you don't, like if there's something that you don't get or missed, you may not understand it, so just raise your hand. Again, we'll try to keep this moving, we'll break it up, and we're going to try to make it as meaningful as possible for everyone to keep you engaged, all right?
3 goals: facilitating the comparability, enhancing the decision-making process, and ensuring compliance with state and federal reporting. So UCOA, essentially, it's a system of numbers. It has 31 digits, and it tells a story. It goes from fund to job class, and we're able to use that data to create the dashboards that we're going to present to you today. The data has been mainly used for federal and state reporting, but through investments in our team and able to expand our team and build the capacity, we've been able to build these financial profiles, resource allocations, and other dashboards, again, that we're going to show today. And by merging UCOA with other educational data, we can better understand how spending relates to students' needs and their educational results. So this is what UCOA looks like when we get it. I wanted to share that for you. So at the end of the year, your business managers or the district's business managers will submit their, what we call UCOA file to us, and it looks something like this. This is the UCOA string that I was just mentioning that goes from fund to job class, and then there's the actual spending and the budget spending. This is just, the budget allocations. This is just an example, so don't worry about the zeros at the end. I'm gonna turn it over to Dr. Guerrero to share more about what we do with this data. It's more than just dashboards, so do wanna share that with you.
Hello. Hello, everyone. My name is Santiago Guerrero. Yeah, so as Tatiana said, we've been trying to do more and more with UCOA lately in the last years, and that was kind of started with a change in the legislation. A couple of years ago, there was a change in law that required to every year produce what we call is the fiscal accountability report, which is a report that looks like this. This is, we've done it 2 years already. So it's basically a very general report of like all the trends in the state in terms of revenues, expenditures by the different categories. And then as part of this report is where some of the dashboards come in. So it allows, so this shows like the general trend in the state, but if people from their own, want to see the trends in their own community, then they can go to the dashboards and start to see some of the trends and some of the dashboards that we're gonna share with you. But one thing before I move to some data, perfect, thank you. So all of these trends that you're gonna see in the next 3 or 4 slides are like all of the Rhode Island districts. The charters are not included in this analysis that we prepared for this. And it includes like the fiscal year 23 data. That's the latest that a week ago we finalized, so it's included here. The report with that data is not finished yet, but we're presenting you some new data. But we wanted to show these charts to show you like there's So this is a trend that goes all across the state. Some districts experience it more, some districts experience it less. And then that's why the dashboard will allow you to see, okay, what are the trends in your own district? So this is a first one. I think you've seen some similar graph like this in the past. It just shows like how fast has the revenues from local sources, from local taxes mostly, compared to revenue from the state increased in the last 10 years. So this shows like from 20 fiscal year 12-13 to fiscal year 22-23, while the revenues from the state sources have increased 44 percentage points. The revenues from the local sources have only increased like 13.8 percentage points. So that means that the education is more and more funded by the state rather by the local, the municipalities. Some districts some municipalities more than others have increased their contributions, others have been flat. But yeah, there's like a 30 percentage points difference. And when we've also done this chart adjusting for inflation, if you adjust for inflation, it looks sad. It looks like actually the contribution from the local has decreased. So that's.
Yeah, so this is a stat we found actually very surprising. So if you focus just on the last 5 years, the cumulative average of the local share is up 9%. Inflation over that same time period is 16%, meaning while you may be getting more dollars, the spending power is less locally. And many districts are only surviving because the state has been making contributions well in excess of that, and those contributions may or may not continue moving forward. Again, so this becomes a high stakes.
Yeah, and the resources that I'm going to share will allow you to see this at your district level. So we know some districts that have used this information to go to the municipality to show, okay, you're not contributing enough, we need more money. So that's a resource that will be useful for school committee members. Then this is another trend that I think you probably have seen. So it's just the per pupil expenditures since 12-13, the same period, to 22-23. It showed like a steady increase until the pandemic. Then the pandemic hit in 1920, like the expenditures per pupil were kind of stagnant. The schools closed for part of the year. That's why it didn't keep increasing. But then after the pandemic, there's like two major trends that have increased the per pupil expenditure. Like as you see, like the slope is much higher. So one is like the reduction in enrollment. So it's like you see the little persons represent the enrollment of districts year by year. You see in 2021 there's a big drop in enrollment. By 22-23 it has been like 6% drop in enrollment. So that affects the per pupil expenditure because per pupil expenditure is expenditures divided by the pupils. So if the pupils go down, the per pupil expenditures go up. But also other things that affected that is like the influx of COVID federal funds. So more federal funds, per pupil expenditures go up. And also like many of the whole harmless provisions, like even if enrollment was going down, the state was keeping with a similar amount of funding. So that explains that big shift. We show this to note, like, and as Mario mentioned at the beginning, like this won't keep going. Like it's something like it's gonna, like the funding is gonna, like the ESSER funds are expiring. The whole harmless provisions are going away. So districts have to start thinking how are they gonna allocate their resources. This other chart just shows like the percentage change is in the enrollment versus percentage change in teacher FTE, number of teachers, by teachers, number of teachers and their salaries. And this just shows like while the number of teachers have reduced a little bit, it's not way close to the reduction in enrollment. So enrollment has reduced like 6.9% since 17-18, while the number of teachers has reduced like around 1.7%. So that's a big gap that at some point, sooner or later, is gonna catch up, and you don't have, you're spending more than what you're getting from because the revenues are driven mostly by the number of students. So that's something to think about and take to account. This one, just to focus more on the impact that ESSER's funds have done. So this just shows like your per pupil expenditure, your normal per pupil expenditure is the blue line, and the per pupil expenditure excluding the COVID federal funds is the orange line. So basically in a normal year without the COVID federal funds, like the trend would be like the orange line. So, but we know that you have to probably have expenditure per pupil around that. So it's like around in 22-23, around 1,400 per pupil was funded using COVID-related federal funds. Those are about to expire. Year 23-24, the gap is going to be bigger because that's when most of the ESSER 3 funds were spent, so it's going to be like a bigger difference. But then going to 24-25, yeah, those funds are gone, so you have to figure out like what to do. And some of the resources that we developed allow you to explore that, to see like how your district is using your COVID relief funds, and so see what would make sense to explore two alternatives, what do we want to keep, and alternatives to fund what we want to keep and what needs to be cut. This just shows the per pupil expenditure by the different municipalities. We put this just to highlight that it's rural and it's very diverse. There's very small districts like New Shoreham or Little Compton, which have very high per pupil expenditures, which are like if they have grades of 4 or 5 students, so per pupil expenditures are higher because they have smaller class sizes. Although that's not saying that there might be things that could be done to lower the per pupil expenditure, and there's like very different types of difference between all the districts. There's like all the urban districts where there's much more higher percentage of multilingual and free and reduced lunch students. So yeah, it just showed like the wide variety. And this one, we just, oh, sorry.
I apologize. Can we go back a slide?
Yeah, sure.
So when you're talking about the per pupil expenditure on this slide here, and you're looking at the numbers, are you going to be referencing them as all inclusive of the ESSER funds as you go through this? Because I know you showed it in the one slide without it, but are you overall looking at all of this including ESSER funds?
That's a good question, and all of these are including ESSER funds. But to that question, the financial profile, one of the dashboards that we're going to show, has an option to include or exclude. So you can toggle on and off, so if you want to see it without. But all the graphs that I'm showing here, it's including. But that's a good point. Maybe in the report we should do it with and without so that people are aware like how much of their budget is affected by ESSER funds. And this one is something that people think like per pupil expenditure is very directly associated with outcomes, and that's not the case. Like there's many, because all the districts are very different and there's so many, in terms of size, in terms of population, like it's not like a clear relationship, but we like to put this chart just to show first that, and then, so let me explain this chart first. Like the x-axis here is per pupil expenditures of the district. The y-axis is the average between proficiency in RICA, in math and ELA. And the size of the bubbles is the size of the district. The bigger, the more students. For example, Providence is the biggest one. And the color is the percentage of free and reduced lunch. So it just shows like there's some things that come up quickly, like the students, the districts that have higher percentage of free and reduced lunch students that generally have had less opportunities and have harder time are lower here. And some are higher in the per pupil, but some are over there. But like the way to analyze these graphs is like there's 4 quadrants. So there's quadrant 1, which is districts that spend less per pupil and have high achievement. Those are the ones like, okay, we want to know like what they're doing, that they're spending little and having good achievement. Then the quadrant 2 is spending more than average and having higher returns, better results. Then down here is spending more than average and lower than average returns. And over there is lower than average returns and spending lower than average. Yeah.
So one thing to add, so we've been asked by the Assembly, is there like a silver bullet that you spend on this and you get that, right? Is there like a direct connection to that? So the answer is it's very difficult. If there was something that easy, we wouldn't even be, we would already have it solved. The first thing we do is we try to see, are there any trends that we can find from this quadrant? So we use the heat map here. We have the 4 quadrants. Some of you may be familiar with Stephen Covey and the quadrants of time management, that the quadrant of success in an ideal world, everyone be in the top left corner, right? You get the best and you spend the least. But there's a variety of trends here. The one thing that jumps out at the page is that the districts with higher concentrations of free and reduced lunch is likely that we're not spending enough even to overcome the challenges that they have. That's one thing that jumps off this page. We have others, and as you start to dig deeper, like South Kingstown, for example, has the highest concentration of experienced teachers, right? So those teachers cost more than other teachers. So it's not necessarily a surprise that they're spending more, but they're also achieving more. But trends like that become a little grayer when you're in a teacher shortage and you're forced to pay step 4 or 5 for someone who is coming out of college. So, but we use this to help explore a variety of avenues. This is actually documented in that annual report that we have. We'll show you how to get there. We have the new one coming out in August. But there's some interesting things in there. If you haven't read it, you may want to give it at least a scan, look for your district, and then it's really done to help you ask questions. I see a hand up.
Which one?
Burrville.
Burrville.
Are they here?
Yeah, it should be there. Or maybe it's not labeled.
There's one.
Oh, it probably is that one that's not labeled next to Cranston.
The little one there.
Yeah, the only two that I excluded are Little Compton and East Shoreham because their per pupil expenditures are really high and they would distort that. But yeah, that should be Burrville, like the one next to Cranston, because it's not labeled. But that's my assumption. I'll double check and I'll in the break I'll double check and get back to you if it's not that one.
Does anyone have any questions about from seeing this? Maybe let's not even questions, any observations about your district, where you are on this?
In some of the dashboards, you can do it like at the school level, which I think it's for your perspective is more useful. Like, for example, seeing all your elementary schools in this way, seeing, okay, in which schools we're spending more per pupil and getting lower results, or less per pupil and getting better results. That's something that's useful, yeah, to see also, like, instead of the dots being each district, the dots being each school in your district.
I have to say, so you had said before that 45% of most of the budgets go to personnel and benefits. So that's way above, I'm comparing to, we're 83%.
Just teachers.
Just teachers. Just teachers, yeah, exactly. Yeah, just teachers.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah. Yeah, I left it just for teachers because we had the trend on the number of teachers rather than all staff. We don't have all the staff numbers.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Mario, one thing I want to mention in that doesn't really pull out. We've got the poverty levels, we've got the MLL percentages, and special ed, and science are over 30% of those. We looked at the YCAS for those categories, 0.1% in terms of their results on YCAS. If you have children who can't even speak English, read English, how can they be taking these tests? Doesn't make any sense. So we're comparing apples to whatever, balloons. That shot means nothing. Doesn't really tell the story about all communities.
Yeah, and this chart this isn't the end all and be all. This is the first step to explore some of these things. But these are some of the highlights and the challenges that we're finding. And again, those proportions are growing. So the challenges you face will only be more severe. So I think this is to help raise those questions and perhaps answer some of these. So this chart isn't like run with this and say, oh, whoever, Cumberland's number one. Like, that's not the point of this chart. This is a metric, right? That the metric that the state uses to show, and whether it's right or wrong. But again, it's only one facet of our report. There are multifacets, and I get your point.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like, it's very, and we put there, it's very complex. Yeah, we only the free and reduced lunch here, like as you say, there's many other different factors that affect this and many other different outcomes that can be explored. This is just to show, I think we created this to show it's hard to make that relationship. That I think it's what it basically shows. Other questions?
The comments that are coming from the other members, we can't hear.
So his comments were that at least the default here was just measuring free and reduced lunch, that there are other types of disadvantaged students, that this would look differently perhaps if we did MLL or special ed. And I said this is only one metric of that, though I believe for MLL it's like 90% fit in this bucket, so this probably represents both of them, but it does not capture special ed necessarily. This is just one facet, and to Paul's point that these numbers are growing, so we want to be ready to help all students succeed. Yes.
You also mentioned something about tying it into RICAP.
Oh, each one, like, you could have chosen something else than RICAS score. We could have done SAT scores. We could have done something else. Again, this is just one way to visualize it in response to the General Assembly asking us to do these types of correlations and see what answers we can find. It's actually, and the more we dig into it, the harder it is to say that if you spend on guidance counselors, you get this, or you get the outcomes, because there's a lot of other factors, such as Paul was saying, what's happening in Woonsocket and other places that make some of those investments not as cut and dry, that there's other factors in there when we see that. Yes, ma'am.
Could you explain how you're calculating the per pupil expenditure? Is it just our operating budget divided by students? Because in Newport, we're looking like we're really high, but we also get a ton of grant money along with our ESSER because our city is not giving us anywhere near what that number showing, or our ESSER fund. So are you including all of the grants that districts receive in your per pupil expenditure?
The per pupil expenditure is all the expenditure. The only thing that we exclude are capital projects and debt service. All the funds, grants, everything divided by, and the pupil is the average daily membership. Then the enrollment that we use is the average daily membership. And yeah, that we could do similar, and that's a good point. Like immune analysis, we could do dividing by the type of funding, this type of analysis to see like how much is from the general fund and from other special
Yeah,
funds.
and just to point out, like, this is just one example, right? Like, this is not the only analysis that we run, and you'll be able to see that with the dashboards. We just wanted to have something to present to you all that could get you sort of thinking and making observations and asking questions.
Yeah, which is great. So, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, no, definitely.
When we're looking at PPE, it would be really helpful, I think, if we were to remove the amount of money the towns spend on the oral academies. Because that money is not going to the district really, it's going automatically to the oral academy. And the cost of those students is much less than what's costing the average student in the district. Because they don't have a special education, they generally don't have the NLL academy. They don't have some of the other factors that we have to deal with.
Yeah.
So like Cumberland is losing $3 million off the top.
Off the top, yeah. Going to.
It's a great point.
So
Yep.
we should really remove that number because it makes Cumberland look, and other towns, much lower than we actually have.
Okay, that's a good point. And there's in the dashboard, you see there's some calculations where those expenditures are coded as tuition to pay to districts out of district. So there's a per pupil calculation that actually excludes what.
And I don't want to include the charter schools, just the rural academy. Because the charter schools don't have the fiscal impact.
Oh, okay.
The rest of
Perfect. That's a good point. Thank you.
Mario, sorry, we can't hear when they're talking at you. Can you repeat it? Or someone repeat that?
The question was that some districts, many districts, who have tuition payments that go out to charters may be captured here. Some of the charts you'll see we can toggle it on or off. So in Lincoln's case, right, we're given a $70 million budget, but $3 million, we're very close to Cumberland, just passes through, but we still get criticized from our taxpayers for spending that when it's just going to someone else.
And I just want to, I'm talking more about the oral academies, not charter schools.
But it could be there's the mechanism, like, so some lose to career and tech. That's the same concept, that you aren't actually spending that money in your district. It's going to fund them somewhere else. But there are ways to toggle it, and we can in the interactive version of this, we can absolutely do that.
And at the end, there's a survey. So if there's any analysis that you want to see that you're not seeing here, or that you or like if you want us to come to present or have a meeting with you, you can type that into the survey, and we'll be happy to do that for you.
Okay, let's move to the.
So our team has also developed more resources. So this is like very in-depth, We have recorded training sessions, the accounting manual, our workbook, and a streamlining tool that helps people get the right account strings. So one of the things that we like to emphasize is making sure that there are valid account strings. So there's like so many rules around how UCOA is structured, but the most important part is getting accurate data. So then that way when we do these analyses, they do reflect what you're actually seeing. So that's something that we've been working on and training business managers and other staff members, because there is really high turnover in some of the districts. So that is one thing that we're focusing on as well.
And yeah, before we move to the dashboards, it's just to give you an idea, like this is our end goal with all this more in-depth analysis of the UCOA data. So we want to find ways to link how, like if you're spending on this, it will affect this type of outcome. So yeah, dig in really deep in combining the expenditures data with outcomes data, but incorporating many elements in different types of outcomes, the different demographics of the students. But that's like the long-term goal. Right now, we're just making sure that we present the data in a way that can be understandable and can help you find some trends in how you're spending your data.
And as you can see at the bottom of each of these, it tells you like what segment within UCOA you can use. And so depending on how you use the dashboards, you'll be able to filter by each of these different segments in order to find specific data about your district.
And now we're moving to the, what we really want to share with you are all the different resources that we have developed. One thing, I'll go quickly over some of these, spend a little bit more on other ones. But one thing to note is like all of these resources contain information that in different ways can help you either during the budget process, find out like how the resources are being allocated, can be reallocated in ways that will benefit more the students. Also, like for accountability, it might bring questions that you might want to ask to management, to your LEA, to see, okay, how come we're showing this? How come this area is increasing that fast? Things like that. So yeah, there's different purposes that these different dashboards serve. So I'll go really quickly. So LEA budgets, like LEAs are required to send us our budget, I think 30 days after they're approved by the school committee. They send us the budget, we process it, and we load it to this, so everyone knows who has sent us our budget and like how the budget looks. This purpose of this just more transparency, and I know that many districts and many people use this to see the budget because it has information also, for example, at the job classification level. We can do something similar. Financial profiles, this resource is meant to is at the district level and allows you to see, okay, what are the trends in your district in terms of like your revenues and expenditures? How do you compare to similar districts? And we identify similar districts for each one. And also like how do you allocate your resources between different disaggregations of data. You'll see that. Then this one, we recently developed it. This is more at the school level. So for each district, the resource allocation dashboard is attempting to see, okay, within my district, are we allocating our funds in a way that matches the student needs? Like for example, do we allocate more to schools where have higher need students? How much of the different categories we allocate to those schools? UCOA dashboards, this was the first one we developed. I think this is a little bit too detailed for this audience, but it allows people that are more familiar to UCOA to really explore it. So for example, they can go and see, okay, how much has our district spent on textbooks of math? So they can pinpoint to very particular expenditures to understand. But yeah, you need a little bit more understanding of UCOA to do this.
But it is available to you.
Yeah,
so
all of these are available publicly.
Yeah.
And this one is not UCOA, but I wanted also to share with you. This is the one that it's updated more frequently. It's updated almost every month. And it shows like how this focuses on your ESSER funds, the amount that's allocated, and how much has been disbursed as of the day that the report was. So with that said, we're going to go quickly over some of these. And in other ones, we're going to spend a little bit more time. In a couple of ones, we're going to focus on Lincoln. So you have in the package that we left on your tables, you'll see if you cannot access, you'll see what we're going to go through of Lincoln, but I'll tell you when we go into that part.
Yeah, and these are all accessed. I'm just sitting here because I'm going to be helping Santiago navigate through each of them, but these are all accessible through our RIDE website. So if you wanted to follow along, if you have your laptop, you can either click on the links that are within the presentation, or you can navigate over to ride.ri.gov. Let's see. Is it coming up here? And as you'll see, it'll bring you here, and you will click on funding and finance, school district, financial data. And then that'll bring you here. We're going over the ESSER disbursements first.
So this basically shows every district and what the percentage of their ESSER funds has been reimbursed as of now. So here you will identify, so let's choose any district. For example, we see that, let's see Newport. Newport, up a little bit higher, there. So they have 10 million allocated in all ESSER funds. They've been reimbursed 94%. And when you click on it, on the top, it shows like, okay, of the different COVID relief funds, federal COVID relief funds, which ones have been reimbursed and what's remaining. So it looks like there's 568,000 remaining of the ESSER 3 funds, which is, and it's been reimbursed around 92%.
And
so
sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say reimbursed doesn't necessarily mean spent, right? So it just depends the pace of which the finance office has been submitting for reimbursements. So, if you're like, no, we've definitely spent everything, there could be a reimbursement on the way, and so that's why it's not listed here.
Tatia, can you move just to Lincoln for a second? So if you're towards the bottom of this list, I know Lincoln is now, remember the date, September 30th, 2024, that's when this money starts to evaporate. Do not leave any money behind. You have 5 months to get on your district. I emailed John McNamee about ours. We have about $2 million left. I have full confirmation from him that we're going to spend it. We have 3 buckets, which is an HVAC project that's happening in the summer. We have high-cost out-of-placements, which are going to pay for the March through June. And then he indicated we have some summer learning. So we are on track. But I've been hounding him. If you're below or near where Lincoln is, you need to hound your business manager and your superintendent. Do not leave this money behind, please.
And at least if you don't spend it by the 30th, I think the U.S. Department of Education is saying that you can at least, what is the word I'm looking for?
Encumber it, yeah.
What is it?
Encumber it.
Encumber it,
but
yes, thank you.
That requires like procurements. Like there's
Oh,
a date
yeah.
in the summer where it becomes too late, but we're not there yet. So if you leave this meeting, like scroll down, like, look who's down there, East Providence. I don't know if they're here, or Pawtucket. I already talked to you. Reach out to your business manager and your superintendent and make sure that there is a good plan in place, because if there isn't, you still have a few months to pivot and do something, but there is a point later this summer where it's too late to go out to bid, it's too late to hire anyone, it's too late to do anything, and everyone looks like fools if that money goes back. It's towards the bottom. So if you click on them, I think you have 17 left, which is a large number, 16.7 million. So that's the one we got to make sure, hound them.
And there's an easier way to find your district. There's a way to organize them alphabetically. So if you click there where Tatiana just clicked, you can see them alphabetical, so you can find your own district. Yeah, so this is one of the tools we developed that we think have useful information for school committee members to ask questions to to the leadership in their district. Now we're going to move to the LEA budgets. This one will also be really quickly. So this.
Sorry, I just wanted to show
Show
them
how to
really
get that,
quick.
yeah.
So this one's also on the website. Again, funding and finance, school district, financial data, and then we just clicked on the ESSER disbursement. So here we would click on uniform chart of accounts, and then go down to the UCOA data dashboards. and here is the LEA budget.
So right now we have the 23-24 budgets. We're starting to get some 24-25 budgets, particularly of the regional districts, which I think their budget process is a little earlier because the regional. But yeah, make sure like your LEA, once the budget has been approved, send this to us so we can publish it. And here it kind of tracks like which ones we actually sent us their budget, which ones didn't send us their budget. Yeah, and this is something that we developed a couple of years ago. So every year it's been increasing. I think like a couple of years ago we got like 40 or 50% of budgets. Last year we got like 70. Now we're like up to 85. So as we put this information available and people see that it's out there, I think that has provided an incentive for the districts to actually send us our budget because they see that we publish it and people can access it.
Blue go to budgets thing down here, button down here. So here, this is the budget for Lincoln. Lincoln's our guinea pig because of Mario. But you can see it in this revenues, expenditures way. You could also click up here, up at the top where it says visual, and you can see it in a different way. So it all sort of depends on what your preference is. And you can filter this in many different ways. You can go by segments, UCOA segments. So this is something that you can play around with. Of course, you are passing the budget, so hopefully it'll match what you've passed, but you're able to just dig a little bit deeper there.
Before we move to another one thing to note is that we mostly get general fund budgets. Some districts are able to send us other funds, but if you can encourage to send all the applicable funds to get a better understanding of what's happening or how all the areas where it's going to be revenues and expenditure, that'd be very useful. But yeah, that's why it's filtered. It's filtered to only display general fund, but for the districts who send us information about other types of funds, like some special revenue funds, you can add those to the analysis. So yeah, that's the budget one. Then, okay, now we're going to move to these are the ones that we want to spend the most time on, and we're going to go mostly through Lincoln. And so we printed out in the packets that we distributed, you'll see the Lincoln's financial profile as a PDF version. All of this can be converted into a PDF version, which is nice to have, but it's not as interactive. But yeah, we'll show you how.
Yeah, and this one is also under UCOA data dashboards, and then you can click on financial profiles. There's a lot of data in here, so you just have to be a little patient as it loads.
While it loads, a little bit of context of this one. This one was first released when we first released the LEA Fiscal Accountability Report, and it basically is meant to complement that information so that people can go and see the trends in your own district. Not only the trends on your own district, but how your district compares to similar districts that we've identified, but can be customized. So the first thing is, Tatiana chose Lincoln, and if you can put the big screen when it'll be great. So while it loads a little bit, so how this works in general terms, your district is in blue, like the blue is your district, and when you see the gray dots, those are the comparable districts. So for Lincoln, the comparable districts that we identified are Cumberland, Borealville, and Coventry, and the way that we identified the comparable districts was like following an algorithm, so basically that take into account, is it a suburban district, and within the suburban districts, districts that have a similar state share ratio. So those are the ones that are, in theory, are very similar, although there's a way to customize it to include other ones. So basically, on the top of this chart shows general statistics about the district before going into financial data. And we're going to go over a couple of them, and with Mario to provide us a little bit of context. So one thing to note is like all of this is super interactive. So if you hover over anything, for example, if you hover over there, it says like 5-year enrollment change. It's increased 7 percentage points, and it shows like, okay, what's the enrollment in those 5 years? So the first thing that we see, and it's a little bit surprising, is like when you see the red dot and the blue dotted line, the blue dotted line is the average of the state, and the red dotted line is the average of the group. So we see here like, okay, districts in Rhode Island are losing enrollment, but Lincoln seemed to have gained a little bit of enrollment in this 5-year period. And also in the bottom, in the second line, is how much the students that are sent out of district, particularly to charters or for CT, so it's in most of the districts we see like an increase in this, but in Lincoln we are seeing like a decrease in this. So I don't know if Mario can provide some context of what's happening there.
So one of the benefits of these is that it lets you analyze any policy changes you've made to see if they're actually working. So if Lincoln, like many of you, we lose students to charter schools, just like you. We lose students to Davies, to the Met Center. So we're losing students, and we started to survey parents to understand why they were leaving, because every student that leaves, regardless of your breakdown of state and local aid, it's about $18,000 per student. Every child that leaves at kindergarten times 13, that's $250,000 what each child is worth. And if you lose them at kindergarten, they likely don't come back. So what we had done, and Marianne was aware of this years ago, about 4 years ago, we did surveying. Why were students going to BVP? Because if you look at the RICAS data and the STAR ratings, Lincoln is higher than BVP. And what we found was two things. Number one, they liked that BVP was open longer. They were open earlier, and they were open later, so parents could drop off and then drive to Massachusetts to go to work. Many of them were going to Boston. So we expanded our hours in the morning as well as the afternoon. We also, from user surveys, were that BVP has a lot of new elementary schools. So when parents were going to go see the schools, they liked seeing the new gym and the new spaces that BVP had to offer, where our elementary schools are not new. And in response, we passed a bond last November in Lincoln, the highest approval rate in the state, but we're building new science rooms, gyms, cafeterias, we've done the media center, so we're proactively making changes, and it's actually working. Our numbers have declined by 17%. We also lose students to Davies for other reasons, that's for career and tech programs. Well, in response, we've added our own programs, and as you'll see later, we are now spending money on CT where we weren't 3 or 4 years ago, so we've added culinary, automotive, carpentry. We've added these new programs as a way to protect ourselves and keep those money in our community. So it works, prospectively. Did it work? The answer is yes, it's working. But this also helps to find and ask new questions. Oh, should we do something else moving forward? I think it's on this piece. But again, this is just to show how. Oh, and then we added this from this year, which is like test scores. We're again trying to make connections to investments and outcomes. These are here. Again, you can click on any of them. You can switch who the benchmark districts are, but all this is meant to be interactive to see this. So it's 4 pages, as you'll see, but the first is really on just some comparisons here, and then we dig a little deeper into the type of expenditures and revenues that we have.
And a couple of things that we've seen I've seen many of these and see some trends that you might want to see, look in your district. One is if you go to multilingual learners, if you hover over, it shows like Lincoln doesn't have a high percentage, but it's increasing. In most of the districts we've seen so this just shows the trend in the percentage of multilingual learners. It has increased a little bit in Lincoln. In other ones we see that it's increased many consecutive years, so that's something to think about, are we providing services to this particular population that needs those needs, that has special needs. Also in chronic absenteeism, I know the commissioner at the beginning mentioned about chronic absenteeism. If you hover over, you can see the trend, how before the pandemic, around 17% of the kids were chronically absent. Then the pandemic hit, it went almost up to 30% in this district. And now it's going back to more reasonable, but the hope is to keep going down in the future to more, to levels at least pre-pandemic. Here it just shows the per pupil expenditure trend. I think this shows the same trend that we saw at the statewide. So 2021, 1920, you see a little drop in the per pupil when the COVID hit and the close were closed, and then it's increasing a little bit faster after that. We don't see much the enrollment decrease affecting the per pupil, but probably some additional revenues from federal sources. Here to the question that we had before, in this one you can see different types of ways to calculate the per pupil. The one that is default is excluding tuition to other Rhode Island LEAs. So this one is excluding the tuition that the district pays to send their students to charters, to mayoral schools, to other districts for CTE programs. So but you can change to different types of calculations. Here just shows how you compare with in terms of per pupil. So Lincoln is around the average of the district. Yeah, some other ones have a higher per pupil. Down here, again, this focuses on the revenue part, which at the beginning, if you remember the presentation, we saw the trend in the state. Here you can see the same trend in the state that Lincoln is relying more and more on revenues from state sources and less on revenues of total taxes. And how these graphs are to be interpreted is like, and we'll see many of these graphs in the next pages. So basically at the left, it just shows like the amount of dollars in all the different categories. But then here, yeah, everything's interactive, so you can hover over. But here it just shows like in 17-18, what percentage made up local taxes. So 71.9% was local taxes for Lincoln. Now in 22-23, it's go down to 64.8, which means that it's reduced 7.1 percentage points, which is what's down there. So that's how you interpret this. So yeah, as we said, like, looks like it's relying more and more on revenues from the state, less and less on local taxes. And you can see that in this chart. So how these charts are interpreted is the same way, like these are the per pupil revenues of the different categories. Your district is the blue one, the comparable ones are the gray ones. So it looks like while Lincoln is kind of stable in terms of how much they get from local taxes, they get a higher per pupil than other districts, comparable districts. But if you hover over, you can see that it's been very flat. While if you hover over revenue from state sources, you can see, yeah, it's been like, so yeah, you'll see that for your district, but I'm just pointing some things that you might want to look more into when you see this profile for your district. And now we can move quickly over the other pages to see if there's something to highlight. Yeah, and I'll just highlight, now that I explained how to interpret this, I think you can do them yourself. Also in the handouts that we gave, there's some instructions on how to interpret this. But basically, here on the top is the expenditures by function. I guess what I want to highlight in this case of Lincoln is the category non-operating commitments, and non-operating commitments is the category where the out-of-district tuition is included. So you can see that, as Mario mentioned, like less and less of their budget is going to non-operating commitments, which means this allows them to increase, like a higher share is to allocate it to other areas such as instruction and instructional support. And yeah, and on the right you can see it's close to the average of the districts in all of the categories. I think the last part where I'm gonna spend a lot more time is on expenditures by program. So this is how much the district is spending by program on all these different categories. So CTE, you can see it's spending like a higher percentage of their budget is going towards CTE. One thing to note as well, to the right, if you see bilingual ESL education, it calculates how much you spend on bilingual ESL education per multilingual learner. So it's below average, and I think, and if you hover over, you can see the trend probably is going down. I feel like as there's been more multilingual learners, I think the expenditure, like how much is spent on services to serve this population has not increased at the same rate.
Yeah, so one thing, so if you, and again, goes back to finding solutions within your budget. Our tuition payments decreased by 2.1%. Our CT increases were almost the same. So rather than send the money out, it stayed in the building, it provided CT programs, and kids decided not to leave, right? It's those types of choices that we're making. And you can see when the high school was renovated in 2021 is when the brown for CT appears, right? There wasn't anything prior to that. But again, like the math almost works perfectly where you make decisions within your budget as opposed to just ask for more from the municipality.
And one thing that's new, last year when we showed these reports to everyone and shared it with business managers, sometimes we met with superintendents and with the chair, we met with several people explaining these resources. When we went to special education and CTE, those per pupil expenditures, there always was the question, okay, how much of this is for students that are in classroom versus students that are either outplaced for special education or sent to another district or school for CTE. So we decided to add this new analysis down in the bottom, which shows like, okay, of your expenditures in special education, how much is it on your own students in your own classrooms versus how much is of sending students out of district, outplaced out of district. So yeah, so this is combined. So you see special education. So Lincoln spends $28,553 per student with IEP on special education. But if you go to the bottom, you can see, okay, how much do you spend in outplaced versus in district? And you can see there the trends, like when in district is blue and outplaced is gray. So it looks like it's like outplaced is a higher share in the later year. But anyway, this is a tool for you to explore more your special education expenditures. The same happens with CT. The blue in-district program, there's been an increase in expenditures in terms of how much is spent in your in-district programs. And it looks like it's working because like the percentage of the total CT expenditures is going down in terms of how much is in district versus out of district. You see, if you go down a little bit, from 36 to 30. So yeah, it looks like you're taking more students in district and less out of district. And then here you can, it's just showing how it compares to a district, but here you can hover. For example, if you hover out of district, hover over here. At some point it's gonna load something. Yeah, so it shows like where are your students going for CT out of district. So it's mostly still, although you said it's reduced, still some students are going to the Davis and yeah. So let's move to the next one. I'll go quickly over this one. This one just focuses more on the by object and job classification. So basically it's how much you're spending on compensation, benefits, and non-personal benefits. And within the personnel, what are you spending in the different categories? One thing to highlight here, like it's in the right, that one, districts are very interested in this one, just shows like all these types of benefits as a percentage of total salaries. So it looks like, for example, Lincoln spends 20% in health benefits as a percentage of total salaries, which is a little bit above average of the other districts. So that's something that we might want to ask, like, is it something that can be, yeah, like what's happening that we're spending a higher percentage in health benefits than other similar districts. And you can see the same trend there, like it's more, a higher share of the budget is going towards. If you move up a little bit, oh, yeah, 2.1% touch more of your budget is going towards employee benefits. Down, I'll go quickly over these two. This is how much you spend on by job classification, and there's not, you can see in Lincoln everything is around average of the district. Looks like, yeah, there's not big trends on how much of changing between certified staff, non-certified staff, executive level, or retirees. Here in the bottom, we focus on certified staff and particularly on teachers. So you'll see some, yeah, you'll see the data about how much is teacher per pupil expenditures, student per teacher ratio, percentage in experienced teachers, percentage out of field teachers. So yeah, all of this allows you to see, understand better your district and the trend. If you hover over, you see the trend and how you compare to districts that are similar. So that might yeah, allow you, for example, if you move down a little bit, thing that I noticed, like in terms of inexperienced teachers, if you hover over the 10%, over to the right, in all of them you can see the trends. So it looks like in recent years, like we've been hiring more on new teachers, I imagine, in Lincoln, and there's like the percentage of inexperienced teachers increased a little bit. Now move to the last one, which covers one of the topics that we hear a lot from the district, and that is transportation expenditures, and it just shows like the trend in operations, and different types of operations, but maybe I'll focus on this one. Here it shows how much is spent on transportation per year, and it just shows, and this is a trend that we've seen in many districts, like the share of the transportation budget is more and more out of district transportation, so it's getting out of district transportation is becoming a bigger share of the total transportation expenditures, and the expenditures are increasing. And here's the last thing that I want to show you, and I think this is another area where there's information useful for for you to ask your district. So this is how the COVID federal funds have been spent in your district. Lincoln didn't, because it's a more wealthy district, didn't get as much as other districts. But here you can see, for example, like, okay, one number that I think is very key is like total, like as percentage of personal services. So what of your COVID funds have been spent on personal services? We want to see a lower number. So if there's higher number, that means like, okay, what are we gonna do when these COVID funds expire with these personnel? Like how are we gonna fund them? We have to cut them or we have to figure out other ways to fund them. Here it's a low percentage, which is good. Looks like Lincoln spent most of its funds in classroom materials. So if you see where tooltip displays it, can you change it to object? Oops. I wanted to show, like, yeah, you spend most of it on classroom materials. I wanted to show what type of classroom materials. So now if you hover over the classroom, the 526 there. So it looks like they spend most of it on textbooks. So that's a good share of where Lincoln has spent its textbook. Other districts have spent, each district had a lot of the way of how they spend their funds, so they'll be very different. But yeah, this is the first one that we wanted to show you. So this is so this just shows the trends in your district compared to all the different districts and the ones that we consider comparable. But the last one, we're gonna go very quick, is more, and we designed it more, this one more towards like budgeting, informing budgeting decisions and resource allocation. So it's basically within your district, how you are allocating resources between the different schools in your district and whether it matches the student need. So yeah,
And this one is also found on the website under UCOA Resource Allocation Dashboard. So here it is.
So yeah, so in the first page, Tatiana showed Lincoln. So then when you choose your district, it shows you these very general categories. So basically what this calculates, on average, how much you're spending on high-need students versus non-high-need students. And high-need students are students that are either free and reduced lunch, multilingual learners, or differently abled students. So actually, Lincoln looks very progressive, like it's spending more on students that have higher needs than students,
So this goes to Paul's point from before about like where's the money going for students who actually need it. You'll be surprised. I looked at some of this for some of your districts. You'll be surprised that the money is not actually going where it's needed across the board. So I would take a hard look. Part of the scavenger hunt will be to do this. I know Marianne and Cheryl heard this. I've done presentations in Lincoln because we find it very difficult to believe that one school, Central Elementary School, has 2% free and reduced lunch, and in the same town, we have two others who have 10 and 15 times free and reduced lunch kids. How can that be? And I'm happy to know that these pleas have been heard, because then the district has added other shifting. You'll see here to Salesville and Northern, where they actually listen to some of this feedback that the money needs to go where the need is. This was just updated, so I think, I haven't seen all of them, but at least some of them I looked. You'll be surprised. In the scavenger hunt, this will hope to reveal it. The answer is the money going where the need is? Hopefully the answer is yes. You may find that the answer is not yes at the moment. That's one of these things, again, to begin to ask as you move forward.
2,000 more on students that have higher needs than students that don't have higher needs. And if you go to the next page, you'll see that clearly. So here are the per pupil expenditures of the different schools in Lincoln. So you see that the two in the top have the higher percentage of free and reduced lunch, as shown by the green circles, while the ones on the bottom, that have lower percentage, spend less per pupil. So that makes sense. You're spending more on the student, on the schools that have more need. But also, if you hover over, for example, can you hover over the one of the second schools? You can see, here you can see, and I think this speaks to what maybe Mario can give us. Here you can see the trend, and you can see in the last year there was a big increase in the per pupil expenditures on this school. I think.
Yeah, so in part, we had sessions like this where we're seeing where is the money going, and the answer is it needs to go where the need is. So we've made some shifts Our FY25 budget, as approved by school committee, further builds on this. But we made a conscious effort, but because it's not, don't assume it's like this, right? It takes work to make sure that they're moving in this direction.
Yeah, and all of the different sheets on this dashboard have the same structure, but it just shows different things. So for example, if you go to the next one.
I just wanted to point out, you could also just filter by the different needs. So multilingual learners, differently able, or you could get just a high needs, like high level overview with the high needs.
So this one is, oh, one question, yes. Sorry.
Do you provide this type of training overview to our finance directors, business directors? Do they have something like this? Or they-
Yes.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, so we, through Santiago's leadership, we've been able to meet with a lot of the districts, not all. So we do send an email out to all of them to schedule a meeting with us to go over all of these dashboards and point out and like really go and dive deep into each of them. Not all of them have reached out for the meeting, but we do reach out to all of them. So we did meet with quite a few, but we are missing some. And again, like, we want to show you this so that way you could also advocate and make sure that they're meeting with us. And if you also want to meet with us, including those, you know, the business managers and the finance staff on your team, we can also do that. And we're trying to promote the fact that these dashboards are publicly available so that everyone, you know, starts taking a look and being able to ask the questions necessary.
We also take this show on the road, so if you want it at your school committee, we've done 3 or 4 of them already. We're hoping to do more. Just reach out. We're happy to come out to your community. I think Cranston, Portsmouth, we did it. So, but you may want to build it in. Like those who haven't, reach out, and we're happy to do so. I will say, because we're pressing, that we'll do like another minute on this, and then we want you to. Oh, we'll do. Go ahead.
It's on this one or it might be on this one. What is the filters is high needs? What's the definition of that?
High needs is a student that it's either free and reduced lunch, multi-late.
Different categories.
That's
Differentials.
exactly, yeah. So for example, if it counts, if they have either of those characteristics. So does that make sense? Like
It's like all of them.
it's all of them, yeah. So a student might be free and reduced lunch, but not differently abled. It's counting this because it's one of either. So the percentages are higher because it's either of those characteristics.
So in that number for high needs, it is adding free and reduced lunch, multilingual learners, and differently aided, and that's the summary number of
Yes.
high needs?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. But it's not adding. It's not adding all together because a student might be both categories or in the 3 categories. So it's
Yeah, the best way to think of it, so disadvantage is the category, or high needs, and there's 3 different groupings, though many of them we find are all 3. Some might be 2 out of 3. This captures the unique ones. All right, so what we'll do is, we'll quickly do this, but the most important thing is we want the scavenger hunt, so you can start to ask questions today about your own district. You can see how to find it. And then we'll open it up to any other questions and feedback that you have. But I want to make sure we're mindful of everyone's time here today.
sounds good. Yeah. So yeah, we go quickly over the 4. So all of them, once you understood the first one, you understand all of the different ones. So basically, all of them show their schools in your district and present another information. So this one is showing the schools in your district and the percentage of students that were proficient in RICA in the different tests. So here, yeah, again, like and this might, in some districts, might lead to questions like how come we're spending more on these 2 schools that have similar characteristics to this other one, and this one is having better outcomes than the other one. So it's you have to look at this carefully to understand like what's happening and what type of questions you can ask your leadership. This one is the same, but just shows by source. So here, for example, shows like the Northern Lincoln Elementary School gets more of their more funded by federal funds, which makes sense because a lot of it is Title I funds. So if you hover over, you can see that these schools get 1,000 per pupil in Title I funds. that explains mostly why they have more federal funds. Then the next one, students per teacher. So this just shows like how much you're spending on instruction and what's the students per teacher ratio. So that's the orange sign, orange circles. We see students per teacher like as a proxy of class sizes. It's not exact class sizes, but like a proxy of class sizes. And we usually see like which lower students per teacher have higher costs because teachers is a main driver. But here you can see, for example, the Northern Lincoln Elementary School has a lower student per teacher ratio. It does make sense. They have the pre-K there, so pre-K usually has a lower student per teacher ratio. The next one is teacher qualifications. Here it just shows how much you spend per pupil on teacher and what the percentage of the students in different categories. Here is showing for example, most of your inexperienced teachers are in these schools that have higher needs. That might be something to look into, while the Lincoln Central Elementary School has very few inexperienced teachers. And the last one just allows you to explore the budget of each district or the expenditures by different categories of each district. So here it just shows how much is allocated by different categories of the budget. And if you hover over any of these, you can see the trend. I think I'll leave it at that because we want to have time for the fun part.
All right, so hopefully this will be fun for you. We thought of doing a scavenger hunt, and so it just has some prompts for you to navigate the dashboards that you just saw to try to answer some of the questions for your district. Of course, we're limited for time, so if you don't get to answer all of the questions, that's totally fine. It's just to sort of get you in the groove of figuring out how to answer these questions. Can you click on it? And we do have, and at the bottom is the link if you want to access it through your website, through your laptop, or if you wanted to access it via your phone, you could scan the code. It'll bring you to this Word document that essentially it just has all of the links to the different dashboards that we just went over. And then here, you don't have to look at it now, but there's a video that you can look at too, where you'll hear my voice explaining how to access the different dashboards. And then each of the dashboards that we just went over has like a guide or a README is what we're calling it. So you're able to go, if you're showing this to someone else and you want to have a way to explain it, those go into what each of the dashboards do and explains a little bit further. And the QR code is for the video. You can scroll down. And so I saw a lot of you already pulled up the dashboards. So it looks like you have that down. On the scavenger hunt, they are color coded, and so you'll see that we gave you some hints. So like if it's a blue square at the top, you'll see where it said LEA. I think budgets go up really quick again. Yeah, so you'll see the highlights of each of them. So if it's a blue square, you can find it in the budget. If it's, orange square, you can find it in the financial profile. And if it's green, you can find it in the resource allocation dashboard. So we'll take, 5 minutes.
Yeah, scroll down a second. If you likely will have to do this homework, but if you're going to answer one question, do those two boxes on the right there, where what school in your district are you spending the most per pupil and which school has the most need. You would want to see the same name on both, right? And if you don't, let's talk about it in a few minutes. So take a moment. We'll walk around as well with questions. If you're going to just do those two, and then the rest take with you.
And those can be found in the resource allocation dashboard.
Just in the 24 data?
Oh, the 24 data is for the budget.
For just the budget.
Just for the budget.
Yeah, you'll see we get them a year. It lags a year because we wait for the year to end in order to be able to collect the data.
Again, begin to have those conversations. If you want us to come to one of your meetings, reach out. We take the show on the road. Hopefully you found this meaningful as we ask questions and move forward. If there are any feedback on things you want added, we just received some great feedback from Barrington that we're going to make some adjustments. So if you have feedback, let us know. If you want changes, let us know. If you want something even custom made for your community because it would help you in some way, let us know. We're happy to help you. I want to thank Dr. Guerrero and Tatiana for leading this presentation. Any final questions on our presentation today as well? We'll even entertain some school construction questions at this time from anyone. Great, and I'll leave you with this. So this afternoon from 12 to 4 at Lincoln High School, we have the first annual Food Truck Roundup, where 9 food trucks are competing for the Governor's Cup for the best dish. And this is not a prediction, but a spoiler, but Lincoln High School is going to win this award. Let me tell you that. Thank you, everyone.
One last thing before we leave. We love your feedback, so if there's anything that you want or wouldn't want, please answer this survey, and also you can always contact us at our email. We want to make sure UCOA is used more widely by everyone, so that's one of our big goals. So if you have any questions, suggestions, requests for data, contact us directly. That we're happy. The more this data is used, the more we know that it's useful data, and we're happy to do it.